Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening. Welcome to another exciting session of the Daz Plus Pro Artist series here with a very, very super special guest I will introduce in just a moment. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Ted, Jeff is here. Dartanbeck is here. Hey, awesome. I wonder if I could speak to you in a second. That'd be great. Forgotten Lectures is here. Very exciting. Dragonate is here. There's also Zero Calvin is here. And there's in fact 33 of you watching. If I haven't shouted you all. AMZ, of course, is here. X201 is here. Mickey Mouse, Ted Murphy, wonderful to see you. Joachim Martinson is here. Wonderful, wonderful to see you. We have a full house and it's just wonderful to see you all. Let me just go and click some magic buttons here, and then I've forgotten which button that was. I think it was this one here. Yes, that I need to press. And then I want to introduce you to my super exciting special guest. Him and I, we have been animation buddies for a while, back from all the Carrara days. It is, of course, none other than the Dartanbeck. How you doing, buddy?
Great. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's fantastic to see you. And it's also fantastic to see Rosie again. It's sadly, I got to say this, Dartanbeck doesn't have a webcam, so we don't see his face, but we see one of his favorite characters, one of my favorite characters, which is, of course, Rosie. So there we go.
Hi, Rosie.
Oh, hey, Rosie, how's it going?
Feeling blue? Sticking her tongue out.
Okay. I think it's more like a check of, do I need to brush my teeth, or is my makeup okay and stuff?
Yeah.
I cannot believe that you have done all this in Daz Studio. That is a massive congratulations on that. There's so much going on here. I've been watching this about 10 times or so, and there's always something new I find. So I'm going to just have this rolling in the background. And why don't we start by explaining how we guys actually met, you and I? How did that happen? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, I bought this wonderful piece of software called Carrara 8.
Right.
and joined the Daz 3D forums, and there you were, along with a lot of other wonderful artists ready to share their endeavors with me.
Do you remember when that was? What year that was?
That was 2009 or 2010.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
It was right. Carrara 8 wasn't released yet, and they had a big promotion on buy Carrara 7 Pro or whatever version, and you'll get the equal version of Carrara 8 for free when it comes out. And they also happened to be selling a book at the time.
Oh yes, printed with pages and all.
Yeah,
a novel concept. I haven't heard of that in a while.
It was on sale for $20, and it came with Carrara 6.5. So all I had to do is buy the Carrara 7 Pro upgrade, and I got Carrara 8 Beta and installed it, and I loved that.
Wow. And you were
still
hooked.
love it.
Yeah. It's just funny because this is I started in 2005, 2006. That's when I discovered Daz. I had kind of 3D ambitions before that, but there was just no entry point for me back at the time. And like literally understanding the tools, which tool you use, that was one discussion. That was like a big question mark. But then, of course, the other thing was, where do you get content like this from? Do you have to model this yourself? I mean, how do you even, if you don't know, you're literally, it's a complete massive wall. And this is how I found Daz as well. And this is how I got started with just looking at the software, the content, and as a free user back in, this was in Daz Studio 2, we're talking. 3 had just come out, was in beta, and 2 was the main version at the time. And Victoria 3 was big. I think Victoria 4 had just come out, literally just been released. Victoria 3 was very big still, and Michael 4 was nowhere to be seen. And I didn't know what constitutes a lot of money. For a hobby, everything is a lot of money, but a little bit of content here and there, that's one thing. But then I discovered this thing called the economic stimulus bundle, and that was something, I forgot how much they were asking, but it contained Bryce, Carrara 6.5 at the time, and Hexagon, I think. and a few pro bundles maybe, and it was an astronomical amount of money for me at the time, and I bought it and never regretted it. And it was this is how I got hooked to Carrara, and looking over the edge to see, hey, there's 3D is endless, man. There's so much you can do with it, especially animation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel for people who say that they struggle with animating in Daz Studio, because it really does seem unfriendly when you're just coming into it from the outside.
I agree.
I kind of feel that I had an unfair lucky advantage from all of my experience in Carrara, and wanting that workflow in Daz Studio. And I actually, that was an impossibility. So
right. I mean, Carrara, for those of you who don't know this, Carrara is this package that can model, animate, use pre-existing content, but do also landscapes and effects. It's kind of a post-production tool, and it's really geared towards animation. It's outdated by today's standards, but as an animation tool, it has certain workflows that we kind of don't really have in Daz Studio. And
like the animate button.
Yeah, right. Yes, is it like the make art button, right?
Yes. Just about everything in Carrara, you could, for example, you can add an AVI file as a texture,
right,
to anything,
yeah.
Plane, or I did experiments with using PD Howler to make water dripping on the character,
mm-hmm.
and you just put that in as the texture map.
Amazing. It's like it's such a simple concept, but it's one of those things that if people from that sort of package come to Daz Studio, they seem to be missing things. There's tools that are missing, the timeline and the features. The things are there, but they're perhaps not as elegant as they are in other applications. So yeah, this is usually what people have a big stumbling block on. But also the fact that animation is sort of something that is kind of beyond just doing 3D. I mean, making a good looking still image is difficult enough, but then if you want to pull off a realistic look on that, this is tricky. And you have some tips and tricks up your sleeve that I'm dying to hear. I've watched half the course that is available from Digital Art Live.
There's a lot there.
Oh yeah, there's literally I literally bought that immediately when it came out, and I thought, this is awesome. And I'm halfway through, and that tricks in there I never even thought about. So I'm hoping we can touch on this today. This is exciting.
Absolutely.
Would you like to go ahead and share your screen and talk us through some?
I would love to.
Let's do that. If I go and stop this. We're on Zoom, by the way, in case anybody is wondering. And also my moderators today are, of course, Miss Julia and Mr. Brian, aka Zero Calvin, and Dragon8, aka Nate.
Thank you guys so much for doing what you do. It really is a pleasure.
Yes, I second that. It is wonderful to be with you here, and it's always great to know that you are there. And if you guys have any questions, at the moment Dartanbeck and I get into this zone of being completely glued to the screen, I might have kind of forgotten to glance over at the chat every once in a while. So my moderators will go and fish out important questions that we can then go to later. But don't be afraid to pepper us with questions as we get on. So Dartanbeck is doing the bulk of it, but I'm just excited to be here in a co-passenger kind of role today. So
well, I'm glad you're here with me, because you have an awful lot to add that Jay and I are both animators, and we both work in different realms. And
so true.
It makes a great combination for sharing. So Rosie took out these cyborgs.
Nice, finally.
Not with her guns, but with the sword, which is really kind of neat. But so the reason I'm starting on this little repeat, this is just a repeating loop thing going on. Just about all of the video demonstrations that you see from me, including the demo reel that comes with the course, are really all test renders from my animation experiments. And you learn a lot doing that. Um, so in this scene, all of these scenes, the hair is animated. Um,
dForce hair,
it's
crazy stuff.
simulated. It's simulated. This is Linde's long and curly hair. And then for Rosie 8, we have the addition of Laney hair animated by hand on the top.
Oh, so it's
To
two
just go,
hairs.
it's two hairs,
See,
making it
clever.
thicker and curlier on the top to get more in line with the real Rosie, who just got home with a pie for me for when I get done. She must think I'm a good boy.
The real Rosie. I love it.
Oh, I
I've had
love it.
Rosie, like the virtual Rosie, on my radar for such a long time. She's been with you for so many years. I'm really glad that she comes back in so many iterations year after year. It's kind of cool to see that.
Something funny about that is that when I first met her
The
and
real Rosie.
when we first started going out back in 1997, I had to pull out my file of Dungeons and Dragons characters and show her that I've been drawing her for years before I actually met her.
No way.
So it's really kind of neat.
Thank you for the link, Brian. That's awesome. Exactly. That is Dartanbeck's course produced by Digital Art Live. Happens to be on sale. If you want to know more about how he works in detail, check that out. It's quite nice.
So now just a quick, while we're talking about the course, real quick, I'm just going to show which one? This
Yeah, because
one.
I do want to ask you. That's nice. Yeah, perfect. This is we had something similar in the show reel there. That's cool.
Yeah. So the one in the show reel, I didn't have Limbstick yet, but so this one I basically use the same technique that we use in the course, um, but with the added benefit of gluing her fists to the table with Limbstick. And it's really effective, really fast and simple to use. And one thing I'd like to point out that if you're using Limbstick and having any kind of difficulties whatsoever, go back to the product page and check out his tutorial video and look at some of those examples of what he's doing. Sometimes if it doesn't work out, it means that it's trying to pull whatever you're trying to glue beyond possibility. And so
Right.
all you really have to do is either change the pose throughout that time of the rest of her, or change what, it's really flexible, and he has really great tips in there. But so now I just wanted to show you that this animation is really not much more than a simple Aniblock, but then with the added simulated hair, animated hair, and with the changes of the pose. So now let's look at what the original pose looks like
I would love
without,
to. This is
this is
one of the
without,
big takeaways is that you have this magic ability to take an Aniblock that was made for something else and just kind of tweak it so that she's petting a pet, isn't she?
she's calling a pet to her. And now see, this also demonstrates the difference between using this this ultimate pose to convert from Genesis 3 to Genesis 8 in comparison to using Riversoft Art's Bone Minion. Riversoft Art's Bone Minion would have sorted out these arm rotations better, and they wouldn't poke into the. But just as an example, this is what the original animation was for this.
And you turned it into that.
Yeah,
Magic.
very simple. And yeah, so basically what we're doing in that course is adding things that I call Anim Plus, but basically it's it's a set, an extended set of morph form dials. So like breathe, um, I
These
made myself
these are
using,
things you've made yourself, right? Yeah.
yeah, and these are just using, I didn't make the morphs. What I'm doing is controlling shaping morphs with this.
Right.
And for animating purposes, it's really a pain to have to go into actor and try sorting through all
Mm,
of the, to animate just a simple thing. but with the instructions that I have in there, you're basically just creating these dials, and arms is the big one. That was where I first started, because so many animations that you bring in with a Aniblock are set beautifully to Victoria or whoever they're made for.
mm-hmm.
But when you add it to a specially shaped character like Rosie, they're they're not quite right. So this
Yeah.
twists both arms
Ah, yes.
in it to their limits on in either direction. Just Control Z out of that. Shoulders. This is an actual morph form that just comes with the figure, but we're just adding uh, all of these things. So see, I can, and these are basically just controlling the individual ones.
Mm-hmm. So they're all technically controllers. Some are morphs, some are controllers, I guess, in that
They're
respect.
these are mine are all controllers.
All controllers.
Even this one is actually just controlling morph dials.
Oh, nice.
So it's still actually a pose controller is
So
all
then,
it is.
when you use these things, you use them in conjunction with Aniblocks, I take it? You've got an
Right.
Aniblock, and then you say you had something in which the hands, this is always like, say, a walk cycle, the hands are too close to the hip, intersecting with the figure, and you go take one of your dials and basically add a bit of movement to it, add a bit of motion to leave the original mocap data, so to say, in place, and you just overriding that a little bit. Is that, am I getting
Right.
that right?
That is right. And to make it even easier on myself, because um, some people really don't like, let's just get an example in here. Some people really don't like, um,
ERC, sorry, AMZ, ERCs are enhanced remote controls. They're essentially ERC dials are the things
let's not
that
use that one.
let Daz Studio determine when a bone goes from one direction to another as part of the skeleton. They're kind of, we use this principle called the ERC freeze. So when bones move as part of the mesh, that's an ERC. So it's just enhanced remote control. Is that what as an
Absolutely.
abbreviation?
Absolutely. Let's get rid of this.
Trevor, I hope we will find out. I'm sure he does. Do you explain that? How do you create these things in the course? You do, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. There's a
Yeah.
whole first. There's a part two begins with a segment, a whole video on comparing my controls on Rosie 7 to a standard Genesis 2 figure that doesn't have any custom controls. And the controls that come with these guys is are fantastic. So, but there's not enough of them to what I'm doing with these controls in an animation is basically omitting the graph editor and all of the numerous changes that I would have to use a graph editor for changing a um, for changing a pose. Now look at this. A
This is a great
Genesis.
example.
This is a Genesis 8 um, animation, and this is a Genesis 8 figure. And already, right at the very beginning, we were having an issue. And now I have this 30 frame buffer zone in front of here because I um, because I simulate. And so I always need, but even when I'm not simulating, I still always like to have 30 empty frames before the render begins to prepare my character for. And
I
so
can tell you
these,
how it's refreshing to hear, because this is those frames before your actual usable first frame. There's always something going on, isn't there? It's always refreshing to have some. It's nice to hear you do exactly the same. So yeah,
need to have a little prep.
yeah. So this is not an Aniblock, right? This is
This is
just a
an
keyframe
Aniblock.
animation. Oh, this is
Yeah.
an Aniblock. Okay, cool,
Yep.
perfect.
This is an
This is
Aniblock.
perfect.
Now we're
Exactly what Mr.
Thank you.
Barnick is asking, because he's saying, how can I mix an Aniblock with an additional by hand added animation? It's exactly what we're doing. This is perfect. You're answering
Right.
this question. This is perfect.
Well, so when we do what I just did is bake this Aniblock to the timeline, what happens is that these keyframes get changed into a constant keyframe. So we have to select those first keyframes right away. Otherwise, you'll see that we are still in the T pose. Well, it's Genesis 8's A pose all the way through. There's no transition. And then all of a sudden you've got that, which is going to be a nightmare in simulation. So all we do to fix that is grab those two, come over to this bottom right-hand corner, and we change that to linear. And as I explained in the course, rather than I use linear instead of TCB, so that if I come over here and I give her Ensley signature smile, I can come back here and I can crank that smile to 0, and between 0 and here I have a linear interpolation. Rather than which doesn't matter for this one, because it zeroes at 0, it doesn't go below that. But when we're talking about these custom controls that can go either way, you don't want those spazzing out. So you want that linear interpolation just at that 0 frame, and any keyframe beyond that, these are all going to be TCB by default. You can leave them like that. And the huge advantage with using these now to correct this Aniblock is that all of our controls will show up as little keyframes in here. So rather than having to see this whole, rather than seeing that whole cluster of all those Aniblocks, we're seeing things like this. And you've got that Aniblock there. And so then you just come back here and you set the other Aniblock, and
I never thought about that advantage.
And you can see them, and then you can always just break them down in there.
That is clever. And so you're isolating your stuff from the existing animation that you don't really want to mess with.
Right.
I mean, we could, by, I suppose, going in and grabbing a ton of keyframes, using the graph editor to grab a ton of keyframes and then make that change to all of them. But it's error prone. So this is a really simple fix, because it's just easier to find then as well.
Yeah, and that's how I started animating in Daz Studio, is by doing what you just said. So I would select the right collar, for example, and now you have to, in order to get to your actual keyframes, you have to drill way down,
just so far down
into
all
of these different things, and then they're all separated out like this. So in order to make simple changes like this, you're going to be moving 3 different, and you have to do them separately, which is very non-organic to a lot of artists.
Yes, it is.
So I'm going to collapse all of that again.
Because also,
and then I open this and just go back to properties so I can see my pose controls. And now I just come in and I select her, and I go to arms up, down to start. Actually, even before that, a lot of times what I'll do is use arms twist, because a lot of times that'll bring the arms out just a little bit, and it can really fix it. And so that's where one of my custom ones goes far and beyond anything that I can do with what these are the ones that just come with.
Mm.
But and then I can, also work with it from there. I'm
Yeah,
sorry
just
that it's going so sluggish with all of the screen capture and
yeah,
stuff
it's always
going on,
a
but
little bit of additional overhead for computers, isn't it? No, we're okay. I think we
yeah.
can follow along. There was a question from AMZ. I just don't want that to get scrolled away
Hi,
while it's fresh in
AMZ.
my head. How you doing, AMZ? He wants to know: is it reversible, the process of baking an Aniblock onto the timeline once you've made changes? Is it possible to bake that back into a fresh Aniblock? Yes, it
Absolutely.
is.
Um,
Absolutely.
for one thing in regards to that is, um, if we ever want to get back to the original Aniblock, if we haven't deleted any of these keyframes, all we have to do is go to pose controls, select all of these and delete them. And we're right back to our original motion data. But to your question, if we come in here, what we'll actually get is we'll get the 30 frame buffer zone in our new Aniblock as well, which you can trim off, and then I'll talk about that. Let's go create Aniblock from Studio Keyframes. And now when you get in here, I usually just go with the direct copy, which is usually selected by default. I think the reason it did this is because it knew that we baked. But anyway, whichever one of these you choose seems to work.
Yeah, I've not
But
found a
one
difference
thing that's
between them.
missing from default that you're going to need to keep your changes for these dials is to include this morph values,
Indeed, indeed.
and then you'll get an Aniblock with all of your changes, even facial motions if you do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cancel out of that.
And it is true, Trevor, like what you were saying, to make these Aniblocks, you need the full version of Animate. So you get aside from the 30-day trial version that you get with a fresh installation of Daz Studio, you get, I just put my face away when Dartanbeck is explaining things. I don't want my face to be in the way there, so I'll come back in and out. I'll dip in and out. So the light version, the one that it reverts to after 30 days, that can still play back Aniblocks, but it can't do these conversions from timeline to. I think you can still convert from Aniblock to timeline, like bake to Studio Keyframes. That works with the light version, but you can't create Aniblocks. So yeah, that's what you need that for. It's often on sale. I think regular retail price is about 60, and it's fully fledged NLA editing. So yeah, maybe you can talk more about this later, Dartanbeck, about how you can make the like currently you still had the Aniblock on the Ani timeline, and you had once you've baked it, there was basically the Aniblock and there were the keyframes there at the same time, but the keyframe timeline was taking charge. Is there also a way to do this kind of selectively for certain parts of the character?
It's either or.
Okay.
It's either or. So right here, this little I means that this is locked. So by rights, we should be able to delete this, and it shouldn't make a difference because we're on the Daz Studio timeline right here.
Indeed.
Then if we enable this again, now we're using this instead of the timeline. I have had situations, however, with this is on auto adjust, which I keep it on.
Oh, you can switch that off. I didn't know that. Look at that. How did you do that?
So it also switches off automatically if you do something like that.
Oh, then it's also off.
So now it's off because you have selected.
I never knew that was a menu. How exciting!
There's a lot of things about Animate 2 that a person might not know about, like for example, Animate 2 constraints.
Right, yeah, that's another mysterious one. True.
You can use that to pick objects up off the floor. You can animate the fact that this object is parented to the hand.
Okay.
So you wait until the
Wow.
hand comes down to grab it, add your modifier, crank it up, and now that item is parented to the hand. And then earlier in the timeline before that modifier, it's not parented to the hand. So it's really handy.
Oh, that's what you use constraints for. I've seen the tab, but I've never used it. So thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool to also 12
Oh,
bucks for
yeah.
Animate is phenomenal. That's a really good price. If you want to get into animating in Daz Studio, then 12 bucks is a really worthwhile investment. If there is a bundle, yeah, Brian, maybe you can find that link for the Animate bundle. That'd be great. I think that's the one that contains some of the Aniblocks. Look at that. Leisure time bundle. Awesome. So yeah, those are for M4. So I don't know how useful they are for Genesis 8 these days. Do you know, Dartanbeck?
Very much so.
Oh, you can still use them? Awesome.
Yeah, we go to oh, I don't know if I have the link handy, but we go to the forums, and in the freebies section, if you type in ZAZ converter, ZAZ space converter, you type that into a Google search, you should be able to find the actually put Daz 3D in there too, otherwise you get this other company. But there's a script converter that I actually even have my own special file in Daz Studio that has Victoria 3, Victoria 4, Victoria 6, and Victoria 7 in there. And they're all clay like this. And what that script converter does is, oops, you can, boy, oh boy, you can convert animations from, and there's a whole thing of this on my course.
Oh, there it
Zaz,
is.
and it copies, it actually uses these SGCPA pose converter that's available at sharecg.com. Here's that. And that's a whole package in itself, and that'll help.
Let's have a look. Let's go back there. That was kind of interesting to how the one up. Yeah, like that, exactly. Fix from A3 to V6. Oh, A3 to V7. Look at that.
Yeah, and so that'll do a single pose. That'll convert a single pose. And so what Zaz did was create a script that uses that across all of your keyframes.
Oh, that's sweet. That is very clever. Look at that.
It's very sweet. And so my workflow right now, being in Genesis 8, is I'll take my older V4 and M4, whatever, Kid 4 animated pose files. Back then, they didn't even have Aniblocks. They were just animated pose files. And add those onto Victoria 3 or Victoria 4, and then you control select the Victoria 7 and hit go, and I have it right here, Zaz, boom.
Wow.
And it takes a little while to chug all the way through, and now you've got your conversion.
No way.
Another thing that
same thing. I had no idea this existed. I'm really glad we're having this chat.
Yeah,
really glad.
And another wonderful converter are Riversoft Arts bone minions.
Oh yeah.
So now one thing about these that's really cool, I was so happy with it. I bought it for Genesis 9, Genesis 3 poses for Genesis 9, because I can convert everything up to Victoria 7, which is Genesis 3, and now I could use the bone minion on Genesis 9 for any Aniblocks that I made.
Oh, sweet.
This one up here is called a heavyweight bone minion, and it takes longer to process and to load that onto your figure. However, what it does is it will get everything. So like if you used that, like I was showing before, if you use that where you're bringing morphs across as well as just the joint controls, you use this one and it'll translate that as well. Like breast bounces is a big one.
Oh, right. You know, this is probably one of the top 10 questions. How did you get the breast bounce on Rosie to look so good? So is that how you converted that?
That I use VWD cloth and
Oh,
hair.
those cloth dynamics. Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, that
Clever.
the version 2 came out with a dynamic morphs option, and then it has presets for all of your Genesis characters, not including 9 because I don't.
National Coffee Day, Jeff.
National Coffee Day. Cheers. Oh, that's good. I like coffee.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Cheers, coffee.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, basically, once I started making those controls, see it now in switching this on and off, I lost all of my keyframes on the timeline, so
right.
it's gone. But that's all right. I don't.
It was a
chew up
test.
all of our time doing that.
Do you know,
stuff.
just super quick, there was a question, can you rotate an Aniblock? So something where the character walks forward and instead you wanted her to walk to the left or the right. Is that possible? And if so, how do we do that?
You mean rotate it midway?
Not so much midway, no, just in general. I mean, you can probably just go and rotate the figure, I guess.
Sure you can. Let's turn this back on. And where am I here? You know, it's amazing how much more fluid a person can work when they're not talking through a microphone. Isn't that something, Jay?
It's incredible if you just shut up and just get on with it. Things go really fast. But if you have to, I see this all the time.
I don't have any of this. Let's see, where am I looking? I don't have any of that.
It's also this getting in the zone of something and then getting involved with chatting to people and stuff. It's amazing how much energy that takes away from the brain, actually. If the brain was a CPU, it's like running 5 programs at the same time. There's just very little stuff left for thinking,
So this brings up something too. If you're double clicking on one of these things and it's not adding to your timeline, just make sure that your figure is selected over here. It's amazing how many times it won't be.
Oh, that's what that is about it. I've noticed that before. I always literally just go and I don't double click. I just left click and drag until the little red strip arrives on the timeline. That's how I do it.
Yeah. Now, see, if you don't have a 30 frame buffer in there and you're just going to run your animation like that, you don't have to do anything with this blend mode. It'll just work. Okay. Now, with the 30 frame buffer, which is nothing more than just adding an empty Aniblock. Okay. With that, you have to turn this blending off so that the Aniblocks data begins on frame 1.
Gotcha. So there's no jump.
Yeah, 0. It actually starts. Yeah. Otherwise, if with your blend on, then you're going to get these kind of results where the arms aren't in position yet. Neither are the legs. You'll have that graduation. So anyway, this right here changes the direction.
Ah, right. Of course, we put a field for that. Of course. How exciting.
Yeah. And instead of just waiting for it like that with screen cap on, we can just enter in a value. And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the times, if you get an Aniblock and you add it to the end of one and its rotation is wrong, a lot of the times it's either it's always the same within that set. So like if this one turns out wrong, I would enter in 45 or negative 45 on the next one. Or if it's 30 or negative 30, it'll be the same for the next one down. So that's something that you'll discover as you get into this kind of stuff.
And this value, this is on a per Aniblock basis, right? Whichever Aniblock
It's
on the
whichever
timeline. The
Aniblock
next
is
one
selected.
could be 90, the next one could be 0. Gotcha, okay.
And now another cool thing is you can double click on these to get to keyframe mode. And now we're seeing the actual data that's on the Aniblock, and you don't want to start messing with that because that'll be on a per frame basis. But that's changed by this box here. You have all of these different levels. So if you go to level 1, now you can go like this and come over here and go, you know, like that.
Oh,
and
so you rather than changing the original data, it's just going to be overridden by the next level. So your keyframe is now on another level, but it's not messing with the existing data, it just adds to it, right?
Right. And so you could actually come through and fix how the hands are on the hips, and then you come back through and that's delete. This is bringing the keys down to 0. So now your changes made at this key are now absent at this point, and it'll gradually go up to it. And then you can go somewhere else and hit this again, and it takes it away again. So now this bend will disappear after a certain point. But now let's just on
this note, sorry, does it also have a graph editor just to display the keyframes? It does, doesn't it?
And I have never actually come to grips with the thing. Oh, and see, there's the changes we just made, because we're still on level 1.
Just go to level.
I wonder if I can delete those.
Or
look at that!
Try
brought it back.
Go back to, there we go. Those are the original keyframes.
There's the base,
the original mocap data.
And yeah, so we're actually looking at the Go Figure graph editor,
right? Which is a different one,
which is not GraphMate. This is not GraphMate.
No, exactly. That's because that's on the regular timeline, not on the Animate timeline.
I am so jealous that I never got GraphMate or Keymate before they dissolved, which are now incorporated into Daz Studio, but I'm not exactly sure how, because I didn't have them and I didn't use the Animate timeline before they introduced them. So
you've got them basically. They are much better integrated now in Daz Studio than they were with the external plugins. That was always a little bit of a kerfuffle. The functionality of them is exactly like that there, and made better by the Daz devs when they've integrated it with, forgot which version. But yeah, it's you're not missing much. You're not missing much.
Very cool.
Just wanted to put your mind at ease there.
Okay. So now let's just quick bake this.
Baking this is only possible with the full version of Animate.
Is it?
Yes, yeah, but you can't. I think, sorry, baking to the timeline. No, baking to the timeline is possible with Light.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes.
See, now the thing is back when I first started, I wanted Animate right from the start, and so I bought it and the Aniblock converter for Carrera and Carrera all at in the same swap, along with some of the Aniblock packs. And I've collected all of Go Figure's Aniblock packs, and I think all of Reeser mocaps as well. And I love them.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Bone Tech 3D, and now I'm working on Havana Libera, and I'm liking those. And I'll show you one of Hanna Libera's in action, using my method to alter things up in a big way.
I think
this is Stonemason's Urban Sprawl 7.
I think this is a real talent where that, or this is real creative thinking when that comes in. When you say, "Hey, I've got existing mocap data. It's really not all of it that I want to use. I want to use part of it and then making that usable so that it looks like this. That's very cool. So I
Yeah,
think we'd love to see how you do that.
so we can actually see right in here. Back in here, that's the original motion data on the arms. And somewhere right in there is where I'm grabbing. No, I left all of the motion data in on this one. All I did were manipulate the arm dials.
Ah,
So
okay.
the motion data actually is intact, and that's what keeps it lined up down the street. I, I
Ah,
was I
right.
was I was anticipating having to delete all of the keyframes from the collar to the down, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to.
You left them
It
intact.
just
You just overrode them and tweaked them.
yeah, there were only like 3 more tweaks as she was running to keep them lined up with her target.
How does Rosie catch the guns? Yeah, good question, AMZ. There was one
What's
that you
that?
showed. How does Rosie catch the guns? It's clever. There
Catch
was
the guns?
there was one animation that you had in which she takes the guns out of the holsters. That was
Yeah.
kind of cool. There's so sometimes there's more than one thing going on in an animation, and it's this one was a great example that I thought, hey, that's quite interesting. When she goes and takes the guns out and goes boom, that's
Yeah.
quite nice.
So for this, I uh I thought it would be nice to show people. I'm always talking about Linde's long and curly hair. So when it says that it requires dForce, they really mean it, because this is what it looks like before before dForce, and it does that so that it doesn't collide with any of the figure before you hit dForce start. It's poofier than usual because there's 4 different layers, and each of those layers have roots. And so Rosie's version is a custom setup where some of those expand up to 135 or 145% during simulation. So, and then other ones actually shrink. So I work with the layers to get the look that she has.
Clever.
And this is what if I slow this down, that's what it looks like going from from frame 0 through the 30 frame buffer. And you'll see that I actually move the hip back so that she's already doing a forward motion by the time she hits frame
I've
30.
noticed. So therefore, the hair doesn't basically start moving on the first frame. It's already in motion. Everything is already flowing. And then your first frame, 30, 31, looks the part. Yeah, so clever. Very clever.
And the clever trick for that is you select the hip and you come to 60 and you look at the Z translate, and on this one there was no movement, so it's only 152, but on that one it was like 60. So you come back to frame 0 and you grab this and you go -60,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you've got your movement
You've got the same forward
between there.
motion in the transition. Clever, man. Very
Right.
clever.
And so if it's not going to be a fluid motion, then you just kind of use your artistic imagination and determine what do I want the simulation to be doing. So you can either go forward or backward, and that'll make a profound difference to your first frame. Another
Absolutely.
trick that I do for dForce is I close this all down and I'll select frame 30, copy and paste it at 20. But then I have to remember to select that and go back to linear and then to TCB if I want TCB. If you just leave it alone, you step 1 key forward and you could crash Daz Studio. There's something in it where it'll all of a sudden throw your joints so far out of whack that Daz Studio gets stuck in an infinite loop.
Oh,
So if ever you copy the full character and paste it again in the timeline, make sure that you select that pasted keyframe and just give it a nudge back and forth, or just leave it at linear in simulation situations, a lot of times it's nice to leave it at linear so it has this 10 frame settle, but a lot of times I'll put it back.
Why'd you do that with the keyframe copying? I don't think I got that.
Why did I do that?
Mm.
So that the hair takes this pose right here, because 30 frames isn't a whole lot of settle time for cloths or hair simulation. So this gives it 10 frames more at this pose so that it gets a good settle, so that by the time
I get you. Yes, I get you.
So there isn't a jump at 31.
Yes. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Gotcha. A lot of times it's not a big deal, but sometimes it really can be. Especially with clothing, it's all of a sudden doing something wonky. It helps to give it that, and sometimes I'll actually put it at 15, or if I put it at 10, then you have a fast change to that pose, but then it has that whole 20 frames to settle down. So it all works.
Yeah,
it all works pretty darn good.
I know that when I do things in Marvelous Designer, sometimes I do like to have a full 60 frames or even longer for extravagant outfits that really need some time to settle. So it's a bit like dForce. If you want cloth to settle properly, sometimes 30 frames is just not enough. No, I get you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the gun. Let's talk about the guns that she puts into and out of the holsters. That was a really neat trick. You may have mentioned that to me, but I thought, share it with everyone. That was just such a cool idea. Out of the box thinking.
I have two techniques that I use for this. This costume wearable that I've created has 4 guns in the collection. 2 are parented to her hands, and you can see, oh, look at that. I forgot to close her hand around the cat. Oh, well, but
I didn't even see that earlier. Now that you mention it.
Yeah, which is something odd because I usually don't skip that. But
so subtle, it's barely noticeable. It's barely noticeable.
When it's on frame 90 for this one, her hands come in perfect contact with the guns that are in her holster, and I made it that way in the timeline, so that's what's really useful about having guns parented to her hands, is you make those visible, and now you can just match the gun in the hand up to the gun that's in the holster. And then on frame 89, I'll make these guns that are in the holster, that'll be their last frame at scale 100. Scale 90, they turn to scale 0. Frame 89, these are at 0. From frame 0 through 89, those are at scale 0. And then on 90, they go up to scale 100.
To scale. This is so clever. So you don't deal with making them visible or invisible. You also avoid having to make sure they stay perfectly in the holster. And the moment she grabs them, she needs to kind of drag them from there or something. This is all awkward to do that. It's difficult to do that. A much easier trick is in fact to have guns in her hands at all times and guns in the holster at all times, and then just change the scale from one frame to another, and no one's going to see the difference. It just appears as if she's taking them out of the holster. In fact, she never does that. So very clever. Very clever.
Yeah. And now in this quick example, there's a little bit of glitchy that happens as they're coming out of the holster, but you're not, most of the time you're not actually looking for that. So it still looks nice, especially at full speed. This is, I'm still on.
Yeah, play it back at 100%. That was super convincing.
I forgot that I had that slowed down. And the other way to do it is to just use the animate constraints. And
yes,
actually,
like you said.
actually parent these guns to her hand at that time. Now, there is still some animation work to do to get those guns to follow out the holster. And that's where those animation dials with the twists and the forearm bends, all as individual dials, rather than messing with deleting keyframes and messing around with each individual joint rotation. It's so organic and quick. You just do a couple of quick. If one dial is not doing it right, you just undo that or delete the keyframe, whichever. And it's really fast, really organic is the difference that I felt. Going from Carrera to Daz Studio for animation was a really scary thing, because we're all taught that you can't animate in Daz Studio. You go to the Daz Studio forums and they're telling you, yeah, no, you got to export to Blender. And that's just not true. This was just a little thinking outside the box and just
Yes, yeah.
creating a couple of simple little additional morphs. And now I'm noticing on the store that there are different, like, controller type of things for sale.
I think this is how
These
many
kinds of
products
things.
actually start. Like 3D Universe is a great example vendor for that. He's an animator, and I think for him, many of the tools that he wants or knows from other animation packages, they don't exist in Dash Studio. So he goes and makes them, which is kind
Yeah.
of this is a killer way to think about it. It's very cool.
Yeah, and in that course, I show you exactly how to make them and save them in a good fashion, and then once you make them for Genesis 3 female, they're good to any Genesis 3 female that you have, and then, well, this is Genesis 8, but my first ones were, well,
The
the last ones.
first ones will be, yeah,
but
exactly. The
but what
first ones were probably going to be, that would have been before Genesis 1, wasn't it? Like
um
wasn't there Rosie before Genesis?
There was, but I was using Carrera then, so I didn't really need this. I just
Right.
did it all right in there.
Hey, just go back to the previous one where she's in situ with the full scene where you had the low res people in the background. I think X201 had a question like, how do you, does this all come out of that studio at the same time, or are those multiple passes? Is there
Good
post production
question.
involved?
Good question. So throughout, let me get this playing again and get it from the beginning. So this is a still image, and this element is added to help add some motion to that stillness. Another thing to get rid of that stillness is to add a camera move. And I do that too after this is all done. Now, so that's called a background or a backdrop. And I make those specifically for the animation. This one here is a back plate, which is a backdrop that's in motion. I rendered it to have plenty of frames to fit this animation. And in that, I have 6 of Predatron's low-res characters in there. There's 3 Lorenzos of
Yeah.
very different, which I love that pack with just a very few quick little clicks. They look entirely different.
Yeah.
This guy's using one of the zombie presets, and it just looks like a guy with a bloody face. And so he's going, "Ow!" And she's yelling at him, and he's just going, "Yeah, it sucks, man." And then we have the female police here, the male police there, and this guy's just like, "Oh man, I just want to come home from work." And all that's just in the background for her. And yeah, so that's how I do that. And one thing that's neat about those low res Predatron figures is that Genesis and Generation 4, and I think in that regard, Genesis 2 as well, Aniblocks work reasonably well with them. And these custom controls that I make, a lot of those are already in almost anything that Predatron releases as a figure.
Oh, no
He
kidding.
had
So,
he
those types of dials that you show how to make that improve your
yeah,
animation, he basically puts them into as animation helpers.
that's where I first started using them, is when I was animating troglodytes, and the Aniblocks weren't looking all that great, but they were working. They'd work and give me that motion data, and so then to correct them for the troglodyte figures, I could use the pose dials. He calls them advanced body controls, I believe.
Hmm. That's snazzy. That's good. Good title.
It's Yeah, very cool.
Mr. Barnick, actually, so this is a stay on this for a second, Dartanbeck. Mr. Barnick, it's a good question. You need to have obviously a powerful computer to render this, but there's also other considerations. So if you look at this, I can tell the background is literally a still image. So you render that out once. The background is also slightly out of focus. So do not think you need to render this at 4K with 5,000 iterations for an hour. You can get away with much, much less iterations. We're talking 50 to 100. It's out of focus, it's blurry, it doesn't matter. Then the
Mike,
fog here, that's another layer that's happening in post-production. So this doesn't come out of Daz Studio. And then we have one element with the figure dangling. So that is something that you then, render out as the actual animation. So it's probably less power than you might think is needed.
absolutely. That's another thing is uh, whenever you see my stuff, it's almost always it's never on an up-to-date brand new computer. I build my computers using yesteryears, or even the year, several generations behind what's current. So like this computer I built for $1,000, and uh, the the part about it that works well for this stuff is that I have an RTX 2060 in there. If that's the right verbiage.
Yes, no, if that is in fact the card you have, then yes, that is the
Yeah,
correct
yeah,
verbiage, yes.
yeah, and it's a 6 gigabyte. It's a 6 gigabyte. So I have the same restrictions that most people that just have an average home computer have. It's just that let's look here again. This one. This is how I render.
So this is
Um,
everything that's black is essentially transparency, and
yeah,
she's in vision. And when you drop that, if you were, so you can use a video editor for that. There's special compositing tools that you can use for that. It's actually a profession. Compositing is a profession. Oh, look at that! You use DaVinci Resolve. That'll
I use
work.
DaVinci Resolve, and then in Fusion, this is this one's Rosie right here. I should label them, but I was in a hurry. I just made these videos just for this course, and I did it in 2 days. So
Sweet.
that's how um, not polished this stuff is. It's
Hmm.
not polished at all. It's just that it with Daz Studios iRay, things turn out so well at the very beginning that even these quick little um, even these quick little animation tests turn out looking fantastic. I didn't do anything in post with this.
Oh, look at that. So talk us through this then. What is are there? Which are the what's animated as an what's rendered as an animation and what's animated as a still?
This is all one scene, and it was all rendered together. This is
Okay.
yeah, this is the Digivolt's Sky Dome, space domes, space domes, star domes, which is really, really neat. And then the Alpha Base, here's the Watchtower and Astromaster with this version of Astromaster actually has the I have a mock-up of it here. It has the Star Carrier,
Oh yeah, that one.
not not Star Carrier. It's the Oh, I can't believe I'm blanking on this stuff.
And it's your own website, Dartanbeck.com. One of those things.
Yeah, yeah.
You should read it
It's
more
Rosie
often.
8.
Yes,
Yeah,
Rosie.
Rosie rocks. And speaking of which,
So on this note about constraints in regards to rendering, it's
Commander is called.
For animations, it's a very different mindset than you bring for a still image. Still promo, you can render with 1,000, 2,000 iterations, something like that. So higher if you want, and you can make it as high res as you want. You can render it in 4K or even larger. But for animations, that's often not necessary. So even if you want to save this out later, if the target is going to be, say, 1080, it's not always necessary to actually render at 1080. You can get away with 720 if you're
This is 720.
See, this is 720. Look at that. So for fast moving images, it's often not necessary to go all out, and that also goes for the render quality. So if you think each image would be, say, half an hour to an hour render time, if your animation is 500 frames, well, that's 5,000. That's crazy. That's
a lot of
500
hours.
That's like weeks
Yeah,
of
you'll
render
never
time.
get anything
You
done.
could never get anything done. So you're going to have to go and look at things in the realm of reducing resolution, but also reducing the time it takes to render. So we're talking 50 to 100 iterations, maybe 200. I rarely render above 500 for animations, if that at all. So it's usually I'm trying to get away with as few as possible.
Right.
And then always look at what it looks like in the animation sequence. So don't judge it by a still frame. Looking at a still frame and you think, yeah, that looks a little wishy-washy. You go, no, let's compile this as an image sequence and look at the video. And if you think it sells the illusion, go for it. It's okay.
See, Rosie's default,
Right,
500 iterations.
500.
And that's because she's important.
Right, she's the hero character, indeed.
A lot of other things, I'll actually bring that down to 150. Sometimes I'll just leave it at 500 because 500 actually turns out to be really fast in a lot of things. And then instead of using lights, I use Joe LaGecko's photo shoot HDRI that I just love. They don't give stark shadows, they give really nice shadows, and you just rotate them around, and it's amazing how good they look.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
And did you say you render this at 720 as well?
Yeah, 720.
720
I keep everything very minimalist, just to let's take a look at that HDRI photo shoot. This is just this is just number 10 mirror, which is my default for Rosie's base, and her
nice
hair.
Cyberpunk look there.
Yeah. So that was fun. That's a little geoshell technology going on there.
Oh, there's the crash. X201. There you have it. Well done.
Thank goodness.
Took us over an hour. Look at that.
Videos.
Isn't that cool? We've got video playing. That's no one's noticed.
Well, the neat thing about this is, I just do some screen captures first. Oh, here's the new Dartanbeck 8.
Oh, Dartanbeck 8.
And
he looks very inspired by the old one.
He's very similar. He's younger and he's a little more stylized to try and keep up with Rosie, keep up with the Joneses. Everybody else can be normal and plain. And I hand animated the sheath. That was fun. Okay. I like that. Yeah, but that's Linde's long wet hair, and I worked with the shaders a little bit to make it look less wet, and I really went crazy with a lot of experimentation and just a lot of hard thinking and writing things down to get this hair the way it is. It's not meant to be like this. And so I went really extensive with painting weight maps.
Oh, on the hair.
So I'd start by selecting the roots in the geometry editor and then hit Control Plus to expand that until it's near the tips. And then I would go into the weight brush editor and go fill selected and enter my value. Then I would subtract from that selection and then enter a new value, and then subtract from that selection until I got to the roots to make those really stiff. And so that's why his hair kind of stays out and really kind of messy.
Yeah, and it
Just
it
like
doesn't
mine
stick to
was in
his
the
head.
80s.
Yeah,
This is me in
this is you in the 80s.
the late 80s, early 90s. I was in a band called Kicks Wicked, and I even dressed a lot like this.
You had the same abs, I guess. Yeah,
I got
definitely.
paid to be a monster.
Nice.
I had a very interesting life. And then I met this really cool girl.
Forgotten lectures, good point. This is something that I do as well, about calculating your render time, budgeting your render time. You look at how long one frame takes, and you extrapolate from that, and you look at the time constraint that you're under, and you say, hey, I want to see an animatic in 2 hours, and that determines how long one frame is allowed to render. Or likewise, if you say, well, I've got 2 days, so the finished product needs to be ready by then, that determines how much time you can afford per frame.
Yeah, for an example, when I'm rendering at about this distance right here, that usually takes about 1.5 minutes per frame.
Yeah.
And when I render at this distance, it usually takes about 45 seconds per frame.
Yeah,
which is really a feat, because there are a lot of polygons and high res, and this takes 4K maps as this hair, and it's really a lot of polygons. This is some of his other hair. He takes advantage of geoshell technology to make the hair thicker. This one is actually all tubular polygons. It's just really, really nice hair, though.
Trevor, yes, absolutely. I've totally not forgotten you. Hardware for rendering. So Dartanbeck is using an RTX 2060, which is old, and it's an entry range card, and it can be used. If you were to go and get a new rig today, the current NVIDIA cards that are current are the RTX 40 cards. That's not necessarily the ones I would recommend you get. For the budget conscious customer among us, I would see if you can get one of the last generation RTX 30 cards. The cheapest one you can get is the RTX 3060. It's made by multiple manufacturers. So Asus is one of them, Zotac is another one, MSI is another one. Those are the manufacturers of the cards. NVIDIA make their own, but the RTX 3060 is kind of the model number, and they come in different variations and different RAM configurations. So one has 8 gigabytes, another has 12. So go for the one that has the highest amount of RAM. So RTX 3060 with 12 gigabytes of RAM is what I'd recommend as a minimum. If you can afford it, go with something larger, like the RTX 3080 or 3090. Those have 16 and 24 gigabytes of VRAM respectively, and you can get more larger scenes into your VRAM, and they also render faster. So that's the GPU side. If you were to think about system that you build anew, then I would also look at a good CPU for that. So I would probably go with something like an i7 or an Intel i9 or the AMD equivalent to that. But more important than the CPU, so the CPU isn't actually that important. You should go with a large amount of regular system RAM. And in this day and age, I would recommend you get something in 32 is the minimum I'd recommend. If you can afford it, go with 64 or 128 gig of system RAM, and that with a good GPU is probably going to take care of most of your troubles. Laptop variations are available. They're usually a little slower than desktop variations, even though they have the same descriptions, but a decent rendering laptop will kind of start at about $2,000. Desktops are cheaper. You can also get away with using yesteryear's desktop technology and speccing them out with today's GPUs and a good amount of system RAM. And this is kind of what Dartanbeck and I do. We live on yesterday's technology and we spec it out so that it gives us the kind of technology we need. Like, we basically met through a forum thread that in you and John Stark and a couple of other people were on there, and we were discussing these relatively old workstations from HP, like the Z workstations.
The Z800.
That's right. And the thing is, the desktop, the machine itself is $200, and then you put $1,000 graphics card in there and RAM that no one wants to buy anymore because it's old generation. But all of a sudden, you can afford a 128 gigabyte PC with an up-to-date graphics card for under $2,000. That would cost you $5 or $6 grand if you buy it new or more.
But when you spend that $800 on an old Z800 series, Z800, whatever, one thing you can keep in mind is that in its day, it was a top-notch workstation selling for $8,000.
Indeed, right, exactly. And I could have never afforded it
so bad back then. Whoa, It's got 2 Xenons in there. Whoa!
And today, back then, like now, if you buy an up-to-date Xeon processor, it costs $1,000 to $2,000 per processor, per CPU. If you get a workstation with 2 of those, that's $4 grand just for the CPUs. But wait 1 year, and that $1,000 processor is worth $100. Wait another year and you can get it for 20. It's crazy. Like the Xeons that I have, they're available for $50 on YouTube when I bought them. So like now they're basically coasters, but they would have cost over $1,000 when they came out. So yeah, cutting edge is you're paying over the top. Like many of you say in the chat, the 3060 non-TI version. The TI version is the one with 8 gigabytes. If you get the non-TI version, it has 12 gigabytes of RAM. That is an excellent graphics card. And if you want, and this is that we're talking $300, sometimes less. And on that note, if you can spend a little more and want to go for the 3080 Ti, that has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, and that is a really, really good graphics card. I have one in a laptop, and it kills, man. It kills. It's good stuff. And if you want the Rolls Royce of yesteryear's GPUs, go for the RTX 3090. And if you have deep pockets, you go for a 40 series card. Like the 4090 is the current Rolls Royce. And if you have even more money, then you're probably not in the stream. But if you did, then you'd probably go for a Titan. I think that is the one, or like an 6000 or something. That's kind of a data center type card.
I was reading a post just yesterday where somebody is using 2 Titans.
2 Titans, wow. That is crazy.
Yeah. Oh.
Too funny now that Jeff has the technology, he goes and ups his sub-D level. And now the computer is just as slow as it was back in the day.
But Daz Plus still offers discounts on that service too, right?
Say again?
There's a service that has online graphics cards, and when you look at it, the price really isn't that bad.
Oh, you mean Boost? Boost, the cloud rendering for Daz Studio. Yes, that's another option.
Let's say that you really have your heart set on an ATI graphics card. You really like its performance, and you don't want to switch to an NV. There is that option too. And if you go for some of those, if you pick out the one that's best for the project you're working on, they would get done so fast, and you're only paying by the second that you use these things.
That is a good point.
That is an option,
it's also,
especially during that day and age, not that long ago, when these CUDA-core video cards weren't even available because people were buying them for bit mining.
Yeah, that's true. So that is an option, especially if you're doing paid projects. So if this is often, and this has also been going for a while, this whole discussion, this whole mindset, that if you're done with your animation and you have a little bit of budget for your project, either because you set it aside for yourself or you have a client that you do this for, then you can always say, hey, look, this is going to take me a week to render, and I'm going to charge you X amount for that. Or you can have it done within a day, but then I'm going to have to go and outsource this to something like Boost, and you can just have a look at, is it worth doing that? If the client's happy with it, if you're happy with it, then this is certainly something you can consider for a final render. And this is you just factor that in. Sometimes if you have an animation that takes like literally 4 weeks to render, no matter how much you reduce your render times, that is a really good way of getting things done in this lifetime. Yeah, absolutely.
I know what you're saying. You're saying, Dartanbeck, what is this?
What is this, Dartanbeck? What is this?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. This is one of the philosophers' iReal animated clouds. And no, I did not flip it 90 degrees vertically. This is its standard position, but I used the scale. It comes in layers, and the outer layer says use me for scale and moving around, blah blah blah, and so I scaled it really small, and then I scaled it really tall, and this was just a test. And this is using one of my favorite HDRIs from that photo shoot pack. This is number 21, which has a really strong red and blue going on, and this was just a test to see what I could do with it, because it comes with so many different ways of working with it, that if this test works, then I can make all kinds of stuff. And these are the kinds of things that I make in the particle emitter of Carrara.
So this comes out of Carrara.
Well, this is Daz Studio. This is an iRay render to alpha, and the important part about that is right now we probably shouldn't be seeing. So basically, when we see that in this one, that's what that is.
Oh yeah.
This one's scaled way up. It's really, I scaled it up to make it seem like it's closer to the camera, and here it is again. It's kind of simulating steam coming out of this grate here, and it's really good in post. So that's how good NVIDIA's alpha is. This one, I actually turned the blend down in Fusion so that it makes it more transparent. And there again, you're just adding some motion.
And it works so well, especially with this here, with the still image. It really sells this as a moving image. It gives the whole scene life. It's clever.
It was so basic in these scenes, because these were the first ones that I did.
Yeah.
Then when I get to this one, so this one on this side, instead of just sitting there going through its motion, it's rotating up. And scaling and moving.
And again, just a tiny bit of variation, it sells the illusion.
Yeah. And so that looks more like city steam. And then this one over here, to make it look like it's rising like that, it actually is rising, but then I scaled it overall, not just vertically. I scaled the whole thing overall and moved it to the side so that it kind of stayed on the same path, and scaled it until the bottom stayed right down on the ground like that. And now if you add a little rotation like what this one's doing, that we're only seeing a very tiny percentage of that cloud on this one to the right. And I'm really happy with the effect, and that's all just this simple little test that I made.
Do you know the thing is, this principle is used exactly like that in video games. If you have, so there's all kinds of things that you can do these days with Unreal Engine, that you have a whole world full of volumetric fog, but of course it takes time to be calculated, and then you get frame rate drops, and you don't want that. And for those of us who don't really want to make a game, who just want to use that as a cinematic rendering engine, there are products exactly like that. William Faulkner has one that is called Easy Fog, and what it is essentially planes that look like this, and you put them in the background, you scale them up the way you need them, and they suggest fog, but they have an animated normal on it and an animated effect on it, so it looks exactly like that, but the render time is cheap. So exactly like what you're doing, it's the same idea, is make it as cheap to render as possible, and cut down render times that way. So by rendering this once and then combining it in Fusion, you go, hey, this is awesome. You can probably use the same thing again in other scenes.
Yeah, like for this backdrop that I'm using here, this camera, which I've changed, it's not in the same position, but Stonemason's cameras has this aspect ratio, which I really like. It's that really wide, ultra wide screen, but it is enormous compared to this. So I just went into, I left my constrain aspect ratio on and made the height 720. It's a little thing that I do. I have to get things done, within a reasonable amount of time. And sure, if you look at it, it may look like it's low res, but 720p is an old HD, and for what I want to get across, which, like Star Wars, like what I like about Star Wars, I like the colors, I like the motion, I like the music, and I like the sounds, and that's what I'm after. And perfection is something I would love to achieve. But A, I don't really believe in perfection, and B, I think it looks nice. So I go with that. And if you really look at any single Rosie render frame, she could certainly bake an iRay for quite a bit longer.
Oh yeah. But also but the other thing is that, like, I'm always advocating to use the denoiser, because it's just, gives you cleaner images faster, and you often don't use it, and for the reason that the small sparkles that it leaves behind actually add a little bit of the kind of cinematic grain effect to it. And great idea, actually.
It's like a film quality.
Like a film, yeah. So you think, hey, on one hand, it's a render limitation, but at the same time, hey, let's just use it as a feature and sell it as that. It works for me.
Right.
Hey, just one question.
You get that kind of a film look. And it's the thing is, it's consistent across the board.
Indeed, yes. Hey, just one question. I think because we're running out of time, I can see that. Let's skip the part about animating the dForce hair. Dartanbeck explains this in his course, and it's quite an amazing trick. It has to do with primitives that are used as collision volumes to get the hair out of the way as the character moves their hand. So it's a very clever trick to do that. I know that collision volumes are a thing with dForce hair creators, like Biscuits uses those, and it's just a very clever way to make sure the hair doesn't intersect with things like eyelashes. That's usually what that's used for. And Dartanbeck uses this to take hair, and as you move the arm, you don't let the hair collide with the arm itself. You use kind of a cone or a cylinder and let the hair collide with that, and that of course is then disabled as you do that. So a very clever principle. That
it's amazing how easy it is to get the hair stuck in the crease between the shoulder and the forearm, just because it got wedged in there because of a pose.
And also
now it's stuck inside.
And the other thing is, like, things with the face, for example, there's so much more geometry than there would be just on a normal primitive. So yeah. Oh, look at that.
this was just a fun little test. It's pretty goofy. This was, I wrote down something goofy for the real Rosie to say. And so she recorded it into my phone and I sent it to myself in an email and I ran it through Pose Recorder.
Oh,
And
yes.
this is the result. And when I asked Rosie to do it, I asked her to really exaggerate the facial movements. And so I've learned my lesson. You don't really need to exaggerate. It really does a good job of picking every little thing up. I just wanted to show that down the whole thing.
Hey, listen, we have about half an hour. There's
Okay.
one thing, Mr. Barnick had that question. What hair does the new Dartanbeck have? What was that called again?
Oh, that is called
Was
long curly hair with
wasn't
dForce.
was
No,
the
long
Dartanbeck? No,
wet
that was
hair.
the
It's long wet hair.
long wet hair by Lindy. Gotcha.
It's not the new one. It's not the new. Let's go here.
He has a page. I like it. Dartanbeck
It's so
8
much
has a
easier if I
page.
just go here. Here it is.
Ah, that's the one. I
Yep.
have that. I don't think I've ever used it, but yeah.
Why would you not have it? It's a
What?
wonderful product.
Because I keep buying products and then I keep buying other products and then I keep discovering other software.
So this is actually Dartanbeck's face,
Ah,
but then dialed a little back and then some changes. I use these types of morphs from Daz all the time. I mean, I really do a lot of my shaping with them, but I really need a good, strong character that I like to start with for my characters. And so Dartanbeck is Michael 8's body with Ryle's face. And then he's got the Jeeps project on there. And I got this for Rosie, but it looks so good on Dartan.
oh,
And
so
then,
he's wearing it now, does he? It's
yeah,
nice.
he's wearing this, and here's his headband
Oh, yeah,
that
there's the
he's
bandana.
wearing.
Nice.
And here are his pants and boots and gauntlets,
Nice.
sword. And this little gizmo is fantastic for making expressions and whatnot.
Yeah, I do
And
like
so
that.
then he turns out looking like that.
Dartanbeck.com if you want to check out more of many of the things that you've been posting for many years. It's a good website. I do check it. It's changed, hasn't it? It's been. I remember when I referenced it in the masterclass, Daz Studio masterclass. There was a section on Poser, I think, was there? And I think
I don't think there's one on Poser.
oh, that was a different website. It was Poser History, something like that.
Oh, there's Carrera history. There's a lot of history things in here. History on Victoria.
Oh, that was it. The history of Victoria I used. That was it.
There's a lot of neat stuff.
Hey, what I'd really like to talk to you about for the last 30 minutes is these 2 or maybe even 3 super exciting 3D Universe products. One of them is Limbstick. I have it, but I would love to see how you use it in action. And there's another
Limbstick.
one. Yeah, Limbstick. If you can show that, that'd be great. The other one is part of the animation tools. Set 1, there's a thing that's called body to hip. I love to see how you use that. So those are exciting tips. If you can make that happen, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Where's that? This one right here. Now, in my course, the last video is a behind the scenes look at the whole car chase, not just this. But in there, I mentioned that animating her hands, her arms, was insane. It was very difficult. I tried using IK and I was getting nowhere fast with that. And so how did I do it? I did it all using those dials that I was showing, that I show how to make it, that I show how to build in that course. And then I added in the shifting and the foot. Now, if I would have had Limbstick, this would have been so easy. I would just have to make sure that her body is in the right position so that I'm not, so that wherever the steering wheel takes her hand isn't going to break But there again, that's all really organic. You could just put um, a tiny little mesh, something to lock her hand onto, and you can add in that where you want the hand to slide on the steering wheel.
Hmm.
Hands don't always just stick right in one
No,
spot.
no, exactly. Especially
Yeah,
because the steering wheel has a mind of its own sometimes, and you just let it slide, don't you?
right. So I'm constantly trying to pay attention to little things that happen in real life and incorporating that into my animation just to try and help myself and help
Yeah.
it all look better. This one is, like I was saying, using Limbstick on that table.
So what's the
So
principle then behind Limbstick? Is it that you take one vertex and stick it to another one? Or how does it
yeah,
work?
yeah. So let's get rid of this hair.
Yes, no hair. Slow down. Bye
Yeah.
hair.
And then let's go content library, just Dartanbeck. Oh, Captain, sure, I don't have the table in there. Well, let's just take a box. Let's
Yeah,
go
cube is good. We like the cube.
create. Yeah, let's use Jay's cube.
Yeah, Jay's just special cube.
Jay's cube is in here somewhere. Where oh, there's the
I'm
cylinder.
happy to
Let's
use a
use.
cylinder if we want to go really wacky. But yeah, no,
Let's
cube will
start
do
with
it.
the sim cylinder. Oh no, that's the
Whoops.
wrong cylinder. I don't want that. Oh no.
You've destroyed it.
You know, why is it that sometimes Control Z just doesn't work? Oh, I didn't use Control Z. Ah,
Maybe
I
try
used
it again.
Control
Maybe that.
X.
Oh.
Undo
Does
delete.
Control V then work? Try that. Control V.
I just lost her. Well,
Dang.
why don't I just bring in something a lot easier?
Yeah, even better.
Yeah. So let's just go.
Base Genesis character in gray will work.
Yeah, people, Genesis, bring Genesis in.
Genesis 1. Okay. Blast from the past. Bring it on.
Yeah, yeah.
First
What?
unisex Genesis figure.
He's a dapper little fellow, that
Isn't
guy.
he just?
Yeah. So then
Haven't
we
seen
just
him in a
go
while.
create new primitive, and let's go with a cube, except I want it to have, oh, it does have plenty of divisions in there. Good, good. So
Is that necessary for Limbstick? Just out of curiosity?
it needs some kind of geometry.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I see what it is. I'm looking at zoom controls instead of my, wish I could, there we go. I couldn't see my tools.
Yeah. Sometimes the zoom toolbar really gets in the way, doesn't it?
It's nice though. I really like zoom. Totally changed the world when, for me, when COVID-19 came out, I can hang out with people.
Yes. I
Yeah.
gotta admit, I do more online than I do in real life with people. It sounds crazy, but I have a very active social and work life with a lot of meetings and meeting people, but it's never in person. It's crazy. It's
Oh,
just it doesn't happen
oh,
anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's so nice because Zoom makes it so that you're almost actually, with them.
That's right. I mean, this is what I feel about our little community here. I always feel like we come together and we're all in the
I,
same large
I
room,
love
and we're just sitting around. We're just occupying this whole pub, having coffee or whatever, and it's like we're all together
agreed.
in the same room.
I absolutely love this Daz community. It's changed my life. In fact, I almost have never gone to any other forum.
It's nice to hear. I mean,
I'm not a
you're so
forum person. I'm a Daz person.
frequent in the forums. It's like that. But you're there.
It,
You're generous. You're always present. You're always active. It's wonderful.
it comes and goes. It comes and goes. Sometimes I'll be gone for a long, long time. Well, why don't I just do something by hand?
Yeah, you do something behind. That's cool.
Well,
Just to
well,
see how
actually,
what Limbstick
actually,
brings to the
let's
party.
go in here. I'm gonna change my mind if I may. Not pacing. I want to do not pacing. It just said no pacing. Something, because having motion in there helps part of the magic. So, oh, auto adjust. And another thing is, just so you know, is if you use the animate tool, you can position where it starts.
Oh, that's what that's
Yeah,
for.
yeah. So, okay, we got this. So let's just bake them to Studio Keyframes.
Gotcha. So far, I'm following along. This is
Yeah.
good.
And I'm going to go back to frame one, and I'm going to grab this cube again. And I'm just going to make it a little lower.
Could you
Sure.
take the 16:9 aspect frame away just so that we don't see that?
What do you mean?
Like there, yeah, that's the one. Show aspect frame, disable that. Yeah, perfect.
But I like that thing.
You can bring it back later. You can bring it back
Okay.
later.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. Now this is on keyframes here. So what I'm going to do is, okay, parameters. We have to select Genesis. We're going to use kind of the same. I don't have the controls on this guy yet because,
Cool.
like I said, I lost everything in my crash. So
Ah, yeah, that's annoying when that
I,
happens.
I I have some on my site that I could download and just give them a basic set. I have a basic set of these for just Genesis.
Well, see if you can do it with this. It's just
Yeah,
like
I
something.
will. I can, and I will. So now I'm going to take something that I do a lot. If I want to just hand animate what the arms are going to do, I'll select the right collar, and then right here in the um, timeline, there's right and left collar. And if they're collapsed, I can get the collars, shoulders, forearms, hands, fingers, everything, and just select them all. And so I'm going to go back to 60 here, and I'm going to delete all of those.
Oh,
And so we don't have any of that in there. And then
huh.
on 90 here, I'm just going to take this guy and go front back. Let's go front back with that, maybe a little twist. Maybe I might have to just make that cube a little closer.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
look what's going on here.
Oh, look at
Let's
that.
go bend. Don't. Oh, I'm on the shoulder. That. Let's go on this. Get some bend out of there. There we go. And what about bend forward? Let's go like that. Twist this back.
I was wondering why no one's chatting. My chat was frozen. I just need to quickly catch up here. How exciting. I
Oh,
haven't seen anything since Julia's last comment to Ted. Look at that. I thought I had gone too quiet. No, this makes more sense.
Ted's my good pal. He's got a he makes his own models, and they're really very good. Brash Lonergan and his faithful girl Moxie.
Brash. Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And bend. Twist. I like it better when I have my controls too. I should have used Genesis 8. But anyway, just to make a point, one thing we can do here is take this cube, slide it this way,
Yeah, we cheat a tiny bit.
and then we can go back to right collar, hold control, left collar, and then I go shift Y. And I have mine defaults set up to go recursive from right to left all the way across. You can set the preferences up for this, and this is symmetry. That's
Sweet.
the symmetry. Yeah. And so let's just see what we have from here.
It's just knowing that these tools even exist, you know, this is
Yeah, that's the big thing is I, I got addicted to your channel and I bought Jen Greenlee's Learning Daz Studio Basics, which I really like that series or that video. Okay, so now
yeah, I
what
feel
I
like
did is I just
education resources, there's just never enough, is there? So
so
nice.
I do this a lot. It's like if I have to move something here and I want it to um, be like that at the beginning,
Hmm.
I'll I'll just take that and I'll select that keyframe back up to the beginning, copy, paste, and then just hit delete. And
Yeah.
now I don't have the two keyframes. And that's just a nice little animation trick. So now here we're going to leave the animation alone. And this is just a demonstration, so we don't care really what's going on. I just want to show this because there's still more going on after this. So we
It's
come
like
to
he's a
90.
keyboard player. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that. But we're going to select the right hand, then we're going to select the left hand, and then we're going to control select the cube. So control
Ah,
select, and you have all of those. And then oh,
zoom
keep
controls.
moving this guy around. And then I have scripts and 3DU, and you find this in your scripts menu if you have Limbstick. And I see
Okay.
they have a Limbstick out for Genesis 9 too as
Yes,
well.
it's on sale right now as well.
Oh, that's yeah. You know, and even if you buy this stuff at full price, I've noticed these scripts and things, all of this, anything at Daz, even if you buy it at full price, you're getting an incredible deal. You know, so I don't always wait until things go on sale.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry, just in case you are totally unfamiliar with Limbstick, you select your whatever you want to stick first, and then you select what it's got to stick to. And
I
what it's
was
got to
wondering
stick
if
to should have some geometry to it. This has got plenty of geometry, this little cube. Um, with 50 divisions, it's got overkill. But not then we go to scripts and we launch Limbstick, and you get this great little interface. Oh, there's a problem. It's unable to proceed. Genesis is not a figure compatible with this version of oh 3 through 8. Oh my
dang, it's
goodness.
3 and 8.
For
Ah.
crying out loud. Well, I'll
Dun,
be
dun, dun, dun.
I'll be quick. Okay, let's get rid of that. I'm sorry.
I was wondering, you could have just maybe saved the animation out, try to apply it to Genesis 3.
That would take more time than what we've got.
Oh.
For me, I don't know how to translate from one to the next. Oh, I suppose just burn it out on a Aniblock.
Yeah, but don't worry about it. You do it again. It's cool. It's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna go female, so I have my controls.
I like it. I like it.
It'll make it
Also,
much
the live
faster.
demonstration effect is totally cool. Gives us more
I
time to
hope
chat
so.
about the good old days and all.
I feel a little gimpy right here. Okay, so now I can actually go to. I don't want to
Trevor,
add
me
an
too.
empty.
I would
I
have
don't want
thought
to add an
this.
empty block. I want to go like this. Just go full body, and
Trevor, I had expected it to work on any figure as well. I didn't know it was going to be figure dependent. This call is out there.
I totally wasn't even thinking. Okay, so now why don't I just do this one? We're gonna go to everyday motions. We're gonna go calling a pet. We're
Yeah, call a
gonna
pet.
bring up that example that I was doing. And oh, we're on the first frame, so I don't have to worry about that. We're just gonna say yes, which is gonna go pretty quickly. And now I have my controls. I can really fly on this. We're gonna go
Right.
accept it. Okay, so here we go. Left and right are there. Go like that. Got the. That's all right that I got the neck in there, but I'm gonna.
Don't
Now
risk
see,
it.
this is something I talk about in my course. Is that sometimes you get a selection that you can't unselect.
Yes. Yes, you can.
So Mike, you can?
No, I mean, yes, you get that.
Yeah. So the only way that I know to get out of it is to go ahead and delete it and then just undo it. If you need that key back, just undo it and it'll be deselected and then just make your selection again. I'm not gonna mess with that right now because we're going to town here. And I'm not even gonna, that's so funny because I'm not even gonna use my wonderful tools that I was going crazy about it because I'm just going to, well, maybe I will. We'll come in here and actually I'm not. I'm going to use waist twist and forearm twist. And I can use my one for the hands. I've got all these wonderful tools for the hands. I love my control dials. Closed most. That's left. Let's go close most, right? There we go. Okay, now we go right hand, cube, and then there it is, scripts, 3DU. It's so weird that I'm lost on this interface because only because I'm talking in a microphone.
Yes, it makes a huge difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you've got these options that you can choose from. Sometimes you might want to remove animation from fingers. You might want to remove collar animation, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I deleted all of mine. And then you can save the settings and you can show summaries and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and here I only want it to play from range 50 on.
Oh, so it leaves everything up until then alone and then it kicks in at 50.
Yeah, and I probably should have it let go up here. So maybe we'll see it break. So then you just hit process and you don't have to worry about it because you can always do it again. And look at how good that works. And so
oh, okay.
Right there.
Oh yeah.
35, we should be letting go of it. So now we can go edit, undo Limbstick, and then we can go
oh right.
Limbstick. And what frame was that? 135.
135, yeah.
Now process it. And look at how fast that thing is. I mean, that's so cool. And isn't that neat? And then right here, since Limbstick didn't add any keyframes there. Oh, another thing about it is that if you want, you don't have to, it has options. It has really, really nice options. Like you don't have to do one keyframe each frame. You can set how dense you want this.
Oh, but so like that it doesn't, right, yeah.
Like he explains in his video that a key for each frame gives you the most accuracy of a result. So
I'm familiar with the Spring Dynamics script, and that uses a similar thing that you can say you can calculate on every keyframe or every other keyframe. Yeah.
I saw that and I thought, well, you know, that's the kind of tool that I know I'm going to want later down the road. So I bought it right away.
Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Now let me show you something else. Let's go. Because you asked another question. So I'm going to go open. Wait, first I go file new because that clears everything out. Oh no. See, it's funny because I work in Daz Studio every day making animations and I never have these what am I going to do now moments, but here I am. And right at the very end here I have this Zaz converter.
Oh yes, yes.
P7 Zaz converter. I open that up. It doesn't take very long.
And Trevor, by the way, I do agree with Jeff. It is a nice image, and I will Google it later as well. That's a very nice image.
Which image?
And Trevor was just saying, I have a saleable artwork, a girl playing air piano on a roof. parapet as the sun sets. This is kind of what this reminded me of since we were talking about the keyboard player earlier.
Very cool. So, you were talking about Mixamo.
Yes, Mixamo.
So, now if I have Victoria 6 selected, and I come to content library, get out of Aniblocks, go to people, Genesis 2 female.
And just to let you know, we have about 5 minutes, Dartanbeck.
Sorry. Okay.
5 minutes.
Sorry.
You can do it. That's cool. And if we overrun by 10, that's also fine.
Let's just take. All right. Yes.
Yes. No pressure, exactly.
I know, right? Okay, so if I turn Victoria 7 off, this is what we have. This is straight from Mixamo. And
Victoria 6, so this is a Genesis 2 figure, right?
Yeah, this is Victoria 6 because Zaz needs Victorias or Michaels or Icos or whatever is in that thing that we were looking at before. It wouldn't, you can't just have Genesis 2 to Genesis 3. So gotcha. Anyway, now if I were to just, let's get rid of that. Let's just use this. If I were to just take this and turn it into an Aniblock, maybe this one would work because I chose an example that isn't moving around. But most Mixamos, like when they're actually moving around, won't work well on anything except for the figure that it was imported onto. Right. Okay, to fix that, we go 3DU body to hip, which is part of his animation tools volume 1. And here we have, it recognizes that we have Victoria 6 and we've got frame 1 to 768, and I leave everything selected and I just go process. And what it's doing is it's taking all of the body translations that Mixamo uses and it's putting them into keyframes for the hip. So we won't notice anything different here. But when we, for the Zaz thing, you take the older generation, you control click the newer generation, and I'm not going to do it because it'll take too long. We have too little time left, but you go to Zaz, and I'm just going to go copy current frame instead. Okay, and the thing is when you're doing entire animations, uncheck support undo, or what I do is I go through a whole pile of these things in one shot, and if you keep that support undo, it gets to a point where you start to really slow down Daz Studio and possibly your computer.
Nice option to have.
You don't need to undo it anyway. I'll show you why you don't need to undo it anyway, because after you're done and your animation is done, I usually play through the whole thing and come right back, and then with Victoria 7 selected, her keys will be all there. So I come here and I go create an Aniblock, and it'll, right now there's only just that one pose on there.
Just one frame, yeah.
But now all you have to do is get rid of that. Oh, and we can go like that with this too. Create Aniblock, done, and then get rid of that. And usually it's not working right now. Usually they snap right back, but so if they don't, just go to timeline, clear animation. Oh, we got it selected. We got to select them both. So clear
that certainly opens the door to converting animations to the newer figures. That's very cool. So I remember that this whole thing with Mixamo bringing them into Daz figures, it seems to change like every 6 months. What used to work last year isn't going to work anymore now, and we have to kind of find a different way. But this is nice because it still kind of works with the Genesis 2 figure. So if we have a way to go directly from 2 to 3 or 2 to 8, that is nice. That opens the door. Quite funky.
Yeah, and my way isn't quite direct because I'm first making my things for Genesis 3, and then I just use them on Genesis 8. And just recently I've discovered that if I were to actually convert them, if I would actually run the conversion using Bone Minion as opposed to oh, this is Victoria 7. I don't need it on here. With Genesis 8, I have that Genesis 3 pose dial. But Bone Minion will actually do a much better job.
Oh, okay. Hey, maybe we'll discuss that next time. Thank you so much for this.
Oh,
I really
done.
appreciate. No, we're done. I really appreciate your time. This has been marvelous. This has been wonderful. I haven't actually been on here. There we go. I'm back. Good to see you guys again. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for being my guest on the Daz Plus Pro Artist series. I think there's so much more that we could talk about.
So much more. So much more.
Maybe we
feel
should
sad that we have to go.
We should do a kind of a co-working session one day. Maybe we can tackle complex projects and talk about image composition and, see how we can convert some of these animations. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Let me know. We'll get together sometime.
We'll have
to clear our plates up a little first.
My God, there's just so much backlog, isn't there?
Yeah.
So cool. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Dartanbeck, thank you so much for being here. See you all. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next month. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.